Right, so those Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen, did you know they were Iran-backed, by the way? I don't think our media mentions it nearly enough, do they? Well, it's such a nuisance to global shipping, cough cough, Israel's shipping and economy, cough cough, that the US and UK went ahead and bombed them back in defence of the genocide. How dare Yemen try and impose sanctions to stop Israel killing civilians in Gaza, such as the madness of Western intervention. But of course all this has done is get the backs up of those Iranian backers. One of the most powerful nations in the Middle East, an Arab nation, appalled at what Israel is doing in Gaza, and not by any means letting the fact Israel are very much Western-backed pass them by, even if our media choose to repeatedly not say that when covering the ongoing situation in the Middle East. It's also not going to go down any better by way of Genocide Joe redesignating the Houthis as a terrorist organisation, because people already do not see them as such because of their actions and what's driving them, and also because it was Biden that lifted that designation from the Houthis only back in 2021. So Iran have decided to send the West a message now, both in words and in deeds. Right, so the attack on the Houthis in Yemen was never going to be ignored by their backers in Iran. Those same backers make ongoing attacks against Yemen pointless, because for as long as Iran keep funding and supplying the Houthis, they will keep on fighting, because backing down just isn't in their nature. The futility of everything the West is doing in the Middle East right now, attacking Yemen and still supporting Israel to the bitter end, makes the entire situation all the more ridiculous when Israel ending its siege of Gaza will mean the Houthis stop their attacks on shipping as well. But no. By attacking Yemen, US and UK shipping is now a target, and it has meant Iran has become more involved itself. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard have launched attacks on sites in Iraq and Syria, which they have claimed to be linked to the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad. Iraq have kicked off about this, as you imagine they might. They have complained the missile strike by Iran hit civilian areas, and I can totally believe that, because Israel loves situating their military and intelligence assets amongst civilian areas. The headquarters of the IDF is in a civilian area of Tel Aviv, after all. Now, critics of this move, I'm certainly not ever going to advocate for escalating military action, as it certainly does, have argued that this is typical of Iran, that they always target other countries around Israel as a way of threatening Israel, targeting assets it has outside of its borders, rather than take on Israel itself. But the thing with escalating violence is until and unless ceasefire and peace talks come, it will just keep on escalating. 2 world wars proved that point. There's no end until somebody finally says enough, and hopefully that will happen following a court order in favour of that coming from the ICJ very soon, siding with South Africa in their genocide case against Israel, a case Iran are supporting South Africa in, as it happens. But of course that was before the US and the UK attacked Yemen. So Iranian retaliation, regardless of who it is aimed at, is a consequence of that. It certainly can be seen as that. And that got underlined by the warning Iran sent to the US verbally 2 days ago, courtesy of their Foreign Minister Hussein Amir-Abdollahian, a chap who got given short shrift by David Cameron recently, as covered in another one of my recent videos. I'm sure he was absolutely aghast and terrified by the fact. But he issued a statement mainly aimed at Genocide Joe, saying, "The Islamic Republic of Iran strongly supports the security of shipping and maritime navigation in the region. We warn America and England to stop the war against Yemen immediately. And we also warn America and the regime of Israel to stop the war against Gaza and the genocide against Gaza. The solution will never come through military actions. We told you that you should not stain your hands with the blood of innocent people in Gaza. Do not tie your fate to Netanyahu's destiny. America cannot stand with Israel with all its power and participate in the killing of 24,000 civilians in Gaza, including thousands of women and more than 12,000 children, and then at the same time tell others to exercise restraint, silence, and non-action. The White House should not tie the interests and national resources of America to this Israel's government and to the apartheid regime and occupation." In other words, follow your own advice and tell your spoilt brat of an Israel project to exercise restraint before telling others to do likewise. Now, the Iranian claim that solutions will never come about via military action is correct. I totally agree with that. However, subsequently firing missiles into Syria and Iraq is also making them hypocrites somewhat. Nobody here is calling Iran angelic by any stretch. They're also attacking Pakistan at the moment, targeting a group they happen to have designated terrorists, much like the US is doing with the Houthis. But they're a big player in the Middle East, and the US and UK are on the wrong side of them where it comes to Yemen and to Israel. On that point, though, I did note that the foreign minister referred to England and not the UK, which told me, well, this is how I read it anyway, told me that they are nobody's fools and they know exactly which bit of the United Kingdom are the ones instigating this military intervention against the Houthis with the US, although most people in the UK are dead set against this, not just those in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. We keep electing leaders who choose to rule us instead of serve us and listen to us, and this really has got to end because it's so tiresome now that they do nothing for us here or abroad. But Iran's own missile strikes aside, they are no less right in saying the US cannot call for de-escalation when they've made themselves complicit in the killing of so many innocent people. Far, far more innocent civilians than have died in Iran strikes. So, of course, every fatality is a sad one and an unfortunate one because they are always avoidable if dialogue can be opened first. So far as we know, nobody is pushing that still. In fact, the US, by use of its Security Council veto, has consistently blocked that. So they are already complicit and tied to Netanyahu's destiny, whatever you think that might mean. At the very least, it means him ending up behind bars. Iran have not directly hit Israel, but the Iraq target of Erbil is almost exactly the same distance from the source of that missile strike as Tel Aviv is. And I doubt that little fact has been lost on Israel, especially since multiple people on social media have been pointing this out. Of course, Israel is a nuclear power, though. Maybe that makes the difference. Maybe this is why Iran won't attack Israel directly. And Netanyahu, in his recent absolutely stark, raving, bonkers speech of the other day, said of a conversation he'd had with Secretary of State Antony Blinken that preventing Iran becoming a nuclear nation was imperative. Clearly, the idea of them getting nuclear weapons is, well, upsetting them a little bit. Arguably, it's why Iran doesn't strike Israel directly, as I just said. Arguably, it is why they choose to arm the Houthis instead. Get them to do their dirty work, so to speak. There's a lot of conjecture here, though. It's actually quite hard to disseminate exactly what the truth is, given what gets reputedly said by this state actor or another, because the waters get so muddied by media outlets biased one way or the other. But we try to muddle through and dissect it as best we can. What we can say with certainty, though, is that the longer Israel get away with carrying on in Gaza, the more nations in the Middle East are getting dragged into this. How much further is that going to spread? Well, if it carries on escalating, it will carry on escalating, won't it? More and more countries will end up getting dragged into this one way or another. We need a ceasefire. We need it ASAP before more countries get dragged into this. That de-escalation cannot come, I don't think, whilst Netanyahu's still in power. He'll never back down. He'll never stop. Not going by how insane that speech of his the other day was. It was mad. And I covered it in this video here, which you should definitely watch next if you're so inclined. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.